Right. We'll go over authentication today. And I am just showing you the most basic, simplistic authentication. So we'll go over sort of the simple cookie cutter approach to doing it. And then I'm going to talk about like how I would lay out this if I was doing an actual site. The kind of authentication we're going to look at first is simple authentication where you are either an administrator or you're not. Okay. So if you think about it, that wouldn't apply to Facebook, right? Because everyone is posting content on Facebook. This would be that you have to be logged on to post any new content. But if you're not logged on, you're able to view the content. So I'm just going to do a very simple example first, and then we'll talk about how it could be possibly rearranged to make something that would be more useful. So I'm going to go in to our good old friend Visual Studio. There are, of course, more expansive validation schemes. And some of you, that might be a good thing to take on in some of your projects if you want to look at how to enhance this to be where you could create users and define roles for the users, and users of a certain role could do this, users of a certain role can do that. But we're just doing the basics here today. New project. ASP.NET core web app with Razor pages. Click next. Give it a name. I'm going to call it news because it's going to be like a news site. Very small scale news site. I'm going to put the code on the desktop. And ask for the framework to use, ASP.NET. And I usually just take the default, either ASP.NET 6.0 or 6.0 or 8.0. Authentication type, here's where it's different. You have 4 choices. The first one's none. That's what we've been doing so far. Honestly, if you had the ability to, I couldn't see doing none and allow just anyone to edit your data, right? I mean, that sounds like a recipe for failure. Of course, Wikipedia does that, right? Do you have to be logged on to edit Wikipedia?
You need an account.
Yeah.
Make an account.
Yeah, I don't remember, but bottom line is, under rare circumstances, would you do none? About the only way that you would do none is if you had a database, for example, that was maintained through other means. Maybe you had a behind-the-scenes application that maintained your database, and your website was just for viewing, maybe something like IMDb. The movies, obviously there's a database that's going to contain the movies, top 10 list and all that. There is some things that you can maintain on here, but for the most part, it's maintained by someone else. Maybe through a desktop application or whatever. But I could see having no validation or verification on something like that. Authentication is what I meant to say. Individual accounts is what we're going to use. This is where you actually log into the website. And based on that, you can enter stuff. And again, we're doing very simple where you can either enter data or you can't. So we're not going to do anything with roles or special permissions per user. Microsoft Identity Platform. I believe that's what we use like on Canvas and stuff. I don't know about you, but you get sent to a different, when I log in, I get sent to a screen that pops up. I believe that would be this. And Windows would be where it would use your Windows log on as your user ID, and you could assign permissions based on that. A Windows logon would be if this was like on an intranet or something. But you can't ensure the public would be even using Windows, so that would not be useful there. So, but anyway, we're going to pick individual accounts. Click create. It does its thing. And it already has created a context for us. Application DB context. You have a choice of what to do with contexts in this. Because you already have one context, application DB context. And in that, there's going to be all the stuff associated with logging on. So all authentication tables, data. So that's the first context that you're going to create, or that gets created with you if you pick that you want individual accounts. Now, what about your tables for your application? You can do one of two things, all right? You can either put them in this context or you can create your own context for the application. In general, I would create my own context. So this is going to be this is going to contain all the information about our news site. So this is the applications. All right. Now, you can put it in here. And in fact, if you go online, you can see people arguing or debating one versus the other. I won't take off if you put them in the same, but just know that that makes a difference later on when we're going to update the database. Because now when we create a migration and update the database, we have two databases to update. All right. So we have to specify the context on it from now on if we put them in two. All right, so we have this context. And now what? Oh, let's go in and let's create a models folder. Call this models. And we're going to keep this real simple. We're just going to have one table in here. Next week, I believe we start doing things with multiple tables. And that's where it really gets even more exciting, because now you don't have just one table, but you have relationships between tables. And I'm going to call my table, what am I going to call it? I'm going to call it news story. So I'm going to go in here, right mouse, add new item. Again, pick the singular and add. I have this prepared already, so I paste the code in, and that's our model. All right. Again, typically we're going to use the singular for the model, the plural for the pages folder. And again, try it out, see if it works if you use the same thing for both. I had problems under earlier versions. It got really confused, but you know, if you want to tempt fate, go ahead. See what happens. All right, under pages, I am going to create another folder for new stories. I'm going to add a scaffolded item. This. We get this screen. Now the model class we want to use is new story, the DB context class. This is how we would pick the one that we have already created. But again, as I mentioned, typically we don't want to do that. We want to create another one. So I'm going to call it news data, news context. So when I'm done, we look at this context folder, we're going to have two database contexts. And I think that's it. Database provider, you can do SQL Server or you can do SQLite. Add. It does its thing. And we have ourselves some pages. Now we have to do our database update. I should probably say something periodically so people viewing this video know that they didn't lose connection or something, that we're just waiting. So coffee. Actually go get a cup of coffee during this. But it's not that bad compared to writing stuff by hand. All right, there we have these things. So now we're about to go and update the database. And remember, we have two databases, two contexts to create. So if I go in here, and I say add context, initial, I'm going to get an error. And I get an error because there are add migration, my mistake. I definitely get an error because I used the wrong command. But if I do this even, I'm going to get an error. The reason I get an error is there are two database contexts. You can see them here. There's a news context and application DB context. So we have to add a context or add a migration to a particular database context. So what I will say is add migration dash context. And so I'm going to say initial auth, because this is going to be for the initial authorization, and the authorization data again is in the application DB context. Oh, I got those flipped around. Now it goes and does its thing, and it created a migration. And I have to do the same thing for the applications, data files, database files. So I'm going to add migration, call the name of the other context, so that will be new context. Say news context. And we'll give it a name. And I'm going to update both the databases. And again, I have to specify the context of what I want to update. Notice it's creating a bunch of tables. Users, roles, things like that. I'm then going to update the news context, and it'll be ready to roll. All right, so now I can go in and I can add a news story. Do I have to be logged on to add a news story? Not yet. Why? Because I haven't told which pages have the login restriction. So unless you specify which pages have the login restriction, then any person can go in and enter the data without being logged on. Shame on me, I didn't put it on the navigation bar. That'll be the folder name. So I can create a new title, record high temp in VU 103. Date is today, and summary, it was 99 Fahrenheit. I can create it. Notice I didn't have to log on. All right, I'm not logged on. There's these two links to log on, but because I haven't restricted the page to require login, I don't have to log in yet. So how do we restrict a page to be logged in? Well, we can do that via a data annotation. So if we go in, let's say, the create page, put it in the code behind or the page model, underneath the namespace, if we do authorize, now we get an error on that. Why? Because we have not imported that. We haven't specified using that. So think this is the same. All right, and our little red squiggly disappears. So I'm doing this to the create new story page, and only that page. So when we go and run this now, and shame on me, I forgot to put in the menu option again. When I click create new, it takes me to a login screen where you have a choice. You can either log on or create a new account. So I'm going to say register as a new user, and all that you have to enter is the bare minimum. Password. Hope I can remember it. And confirm password. And register. Okay, now, because we're in development mode, we're not hooked to an email server. All right. A production mode would be connected to an email server that would send out an authorization email to whoever we registered as. I'm sure if you've registered for a site, you've gotten that. It's like you have to confirm that you've indeed registered for the site. So you get an email, gives you a link to click on, and then bam, you're registered. Well, this is our pretend you've gotten the email and you're clicking it to say that you're registered. So we would click that, and your email is confirmed. So now if we go in here, collect that. We have our credentials. We have to put it in. Put in our password. I'm going to click remember me. Log in. And we're in create a mode. And it recognizes that we're logged in as that user. I can log out, of course. Then I have to go and do it again. And we can go in and add our new story. Okay, we'd have to do that to every place that we wanted to. We would want to control via logged on. So that would probably be create, edit, and delete. So if you click either edit or delete, you should get the same login screen to do that. Just had an idea. I guess we can do this. I could actually make it kind of cool here by just hiding that link. So the user doesn't even see it if they're not logged in. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to go to the actual Razor page itself. And, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Razor page for the list. That's where the link is. Well, we could put it in the code behind actually. Let's see. Here we go. See if that works. We go and run this. Oops. Cat sign. Now, because we're logged down, we don't even see that link. All right. And we could do that. Actually, we are logged on. Okay. I have it the wrong way, I think. Yeah, I have it the wrong way. Because if you're not logged on, then it shows. So I have the reverse, my mistake. I was gonna say, yeah, oh, there's a not in front of it. So if user is authenticated, then display that link. Thought I was losing it or something, which I might actually still be, but. Okay, so you log on, you get to it, you're not logged on. It doesn't show that link. I go here, I do log on. And I go back to it. And now the create link is there. So I think that's sort of a cleaner way to do it than like letting them click it and be denied. So don't even display it if it's not, if they're not logged on. So we could do that for the edit and delete as well. So only those would be, those would only be shown if the user was logged on. Now, even though we're only displaying that if the user is logged on, we still want authorized in there. We don't want users guessing at our URLs and possibly getting to the create. All right. I'm going to talk about a scheme in a second where we're going to put all the content management stuff in a separate section of our website. All right. And when we do that, we need to be concerned that we have to protect all the pages in that section because we don't want users to get into any part of the content management system if they would happen to guess the URL, you know, or whatever. So let me talk about how I would have the scheme set up if I was doing this. And I don't know if we'll actually do it or if we'll just talk about it. I would do something like this. Here's my pages folder. It has within it the shared folder. And it has the index.cshtml. What I would do is I would create a folder called Content Management. I would then scaffold the news stories in here. So it would get the create, would get all these 5 pages. Each one of them would have authorize in page model. I would then have in content management its own index.cshtml. And I'm just writing the CSS HTML, but you know it would have the page model in it as well. And I would have that set for only authorized users. All right. I then would have any other entities with their full CRUD scaffolded pages. This index CSS HTML would have links to each entity's index. So this is the section of the site that is for only authorized users. I would then have a portion of the site. I could even make I could make a subfolder if I wanted to, or I wouldn't have to. That would have the user folders. And this is not going to have all of the pages in it. It's only going to have the index and the details. None of these are authorized. None of these do you have to be authorized to enter. And what's more, none of these will even have the log on link. Right? Why show your users a login link if they can't log on, if they're not authorized? And then people would access your the content part of it by typing in the URL. So they would type in the name of your site / content management. They get taken to this index page. This index page would have a link to the news stories index and a link to all the other entities index. All right, and in that way you have a good separation between that. What we have here, again, is just the simplest, barest bones. And again, there's several things I don't like about this. If you're not an authorized user and you come to this page, why should you know, and you're not logged in, why should you know that there's a register? We don't want you to register, right? If you're just a regular user to this site. All the registration and all the user stuff should happen in the content management side. So this is assuming that there's a set of people that administer the site that can enter the data. Other just ordinary users on the web can't enter any data. So there's no login for them. All right, so I would get rid of the register and login site. And when I went to this page, I would only get the listing and the details page. And then the content management would have all of the pages in it, would have the create, would have the details, would have edit and delete. But why let users see that some people can edit this? That's a temptation for them to click on it and possibly try to hack it some way. All right. So again, I would put everything in a separate content management section. Depending on how we have about 10 minutes left, let's see if I can do that real quick.
do you mean about other entities?
Other entities would be, like in this case, we have news stories. All right. Under models, we have one entity. We have news stories. We could have, however, other entities. We could have writers. All right. If this was a news thing, you could have a writer. You could have a topic. Is it a news story? Is it an entertainment story? Is it a sports story? Is it the weather? All right, and things like that. You could have categories. So each of those would be their own separate entities. So what I'm saying is, in this case, all we have is that one entity, the news story. But this could be bigger, and we could have other entities as well that we would want to be able to maintain and let people see. And I just put other entities to represent all of those other ones. Let me try to do this real quick. I'm going to add folder under pages called content management. And in that folder, I'm going to add a new folder called News Stories. Add a new scaffolded item. Okay, I'm going to go into I'm going to close my content management for now. I'm going to go into the news stories users folder, and I'm going to delete, create, I'm going to get rid of all the links in here and only show the details link. And I'm going to get rid of the create. Now, everything in content management I deleted create from the wrong place. That's okay. Everything in content management, I'm going to go in and put news stories. I switched these around. We'll still get the idea though. I'm going to go and put in here Doesn't know about that. I'm just going to do it to the index. I deleted them off the content management page, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to delete them off of the users area. And if users went to news stories, they would get the read-only version. If they went to content management news stories, I did call it the full word, content management. Then they would be required to log on before they did it. Now, again, I shouldn't have deleted, I deleted from the wrong place and all that, but you sort of get the idea that the one section is protected by password. The section that's not protected by password is use only. I would then go into my template and the shared file, shared layout file, and I would, it is, it's not in here. I'd have to find it. The code that displayed that you can log in. And I would remove that or put some wrapping around it that it would only display if you were an authorized user. All right, so this is basic authentication. I think starting from the assignment that's due next week on, everything you should authenticate. It would be cool if you tried what I tried to do. Hopefully you'll get it right instead of what I did, but it would be cool if you tried that. But it's not a requirement to do it that way. You can just take the path of least resistance and do it that way. Just put authentication in. All right, are there any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, we will see you either next week or in lab.